The You're Gonna Love This or Not podcast contains harsh language and may not be suitable for younger listeners.
Why would you answer this call? Why would you answer this call? Why?
Hello? Hey man, haven't heard from you in a while. Just wondered, are you coming to movie night this week?
We're doing movie night this week?
Yeah, same time we do it every time.
Oh. I just figured you were like it. I mean,
Well-
you've been avoiding me for like 3 weeks, so...
I've been avoiding you. This is like the 9th phone call I've made to you today.
Lies.
It's okay, I'm sure phone's broken or something.
Yeah, that's what it is. Phone's broken.
Anyhow, you're gonna love this movie that we've got ready for tonight.
No, I have a feeling I'm not going
Yeah,
to.
okay, think about this. Picture it. The 1980s.
I was born in the 1980s, so one good thing came out of the 80s.
Well, do you know who George Peppard is?
Is he any relation to Jean-Luc Picard?
Nope. I'll give you another clue. There's tons of machine gun fire, never hits anything or hurts anybody.
Is this a Star Wars film?
No. No, how about welding vehicles to music?
The A-Team.
Close, though there is a lot of gratuitous vehicle explosions.
Michael Bay?
No, you're gonna love this movie. Come on over. I'll see you soon.
All right.
In this month's episode of You're Gonna Love This or Not, Matt lures Josh back into the SFP to watch a film he actually saw part of the filming of in New Zealand as a child, 1981's Race for the Yankee Zephyr. This movie tells the tale of a wrecked World War II plane and the race to get the treasure it contains. So, let's listen to the trailer and see what Josh thought of this classic piece of Ozploitation cinema.
Look at this! Look at this! Oh, damn! There's about 1,000 more down there just like that.
Yankee Zephyr!
The race is on for a fortune in gold. And the competition is killing.
What if I told you to get your zoo back in their basic black Land Cruisers and piss off on my property before I lose my patience?
It's just that I don't think that thing is very safe. Do you think I'm supposed to be impressed by that kind of flying? I am not. I want to be put down. I want to be put down. Couple of hours, you said it would take. Just fly over the old Beetlebopter. Piece of pudding.
Jesus, you get the wind up if every little thing doesn't run like clockwork.
You see, the first time I saw the Yankee Zephyr, I was suspended arse over elbow underneath a mixmaster.
That can be arranged.
Let me
Mr. Gibson, I neglected to introduce my associates. This is Mr. Broken Teeth. This is Mr. Ruptured Spleen, and my right-hand man, Mr. Rape Your Daughter with assault unless you play ball.
Forget the speed limit.
I can't give it that going!
Defy the laws of gravity. Get there any way you can.
Joe was fly with your thumb up your arsehole.
Join the race for the Yankee Zephyr in the chase to end all chases. Just hang on tight.
Matt, you son of a bitch.
Now, see, you're calling me that,
but I'm not sure you really hate this movie.
I don't know how to process this movie because I don't necessarily hate this movie.
Exactly.
But I don't like this movie.
It's not.
This movie is in this weird middle state of just meh. Like
it's not terrible.
Like there's so much more they could have done with this movie because
there is.
The actual plot for this movie is really good.
Yeah, it's
like
it's a very
there's a
sort
World War
story.
I plane that was crashed in the middle of New Zealand that this drunk found that was full of stuff that he didn't realize it was full of until later on in the movie. And so all he does is steal the invaluable stuff that he thinks is worth something because he didn't take time because he's so obsessed with the alcohol on the plane because he's a drunk and the whiskey's the only thing that matters to him. And so it's really hard for me to talk about this movie because there's nothing really to talk about. Like it wasn't really good, but it wasn't really bad. It just kind of has this to it, and I don't like. It's definitely the best movie we've watched so far, but not because it's good, but just because it wasn't terrible.
Yeah, well, this movie is a prime example of the early '80s Ozploitation movies, which were movies made in Australia and New Zealand because of massive tax breaks they could get. This movie was originally supposed to be made in Australia, but got moved to New Zealand because the Actors Union threw a fit because the main four leads are not Australian actors. But, I mean, it's a good movie. It's really... I enjoy this movie.
It's not a good movie. That's too far of a stretch. Like, it's not a good movie. It just isn't a bad movie. It's one of those movies where, like, you watch it and you're like, I don't hate this, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I wouldn't watch it again. I mean, it's one of those movies where it's just like, I watched this movie. It wasn't the worst thing to happen to me. It definitely could have been worse. I mean, we've watched 4 other movies that were definitely more terrible than this. But I don't know if I can rate it high. I mean, I can't imagine it being something that I would be like, hey, let's sit down and watch this movie again. I mean, it's as far as the New Zealand movies we've watched so far, I mean, it's just not good. I mean, Hannibal Smith's in it. I like him, George Peppard, but his part in this movie was just so, and his accent, I don't know what he was going for.
Yeah, I don't know
here.
what kind of accent that's supposed to be.
It was like a weird British,
like a
New Englandish,
non-regional, mid-Atlantic sort of thing going on.
I don't know. The special effects weren't terrible. The stunts weren't terrible.
He's like the most New Hampshire gangster you've ever heard in your life.
Yeah, I don't know. His voice was almost reminiscent of the A-Team. Like that's just like his what he sounds like.
Well, this came out the year before the A-Team, so I guess it kind of makes sense.
I don't know this. I don't know. It just bored me.
It bored you, huh?
There's
a jet boat chase. They turn a helicopter into a tank.
Yeah.
There's lots of machine gun fire, and it bored you?
Just wasn't.
There are massive, massive vehicle explosions that by no rights, like unless the vehicle is filled with nitroglycerin, the vehicles are not going to explode.
It's just like your standard shitty Michael Bay film.
Well,
explosions that make no sense. Chase scenes that don't really exist.
Well, this movie has no CGI in it, though. This is all legit stunt
Planes
work.
sinking in the middle of glacier lakes. My quotes again that you can't see. That there's no way it should have been that deep, that close out. 50 feet off the banks, and it's 1,000 feet deep already. And somehow they can't dive down and get the gold that was lost down there because I don't know. In the chemistry between the two mainish actors.
Okay, well, we could talk about that. Leslie Ann Warren and Ken Wall, the sexual chemistry between those two is like, I don't know, 2 hydrogen molecules on opposite ends of the universe.
It's like the chemistry between a pencil and a piece of paper.
It's ridiculous. No, because a pencil and a piece of paper will occasionally touch each other.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, the whole movie was just terrible. The main actor, the drunk guy, he wasn't that funny. He just kept giggling weirdly, and he used a chainsaw at some point.
Now you're talking about Donald Pleasence, one of the greatest character actors of the 20th century.
Break into a bar because they locked the door because I don't know. I mean, he breaks the window out. Instead of using that to unlock the door, he just continues to saw through it, and then some guys to rescue some trophies that we don't really know what they're there for.
You don't sound disappointed, and you don't sound happy. You just sound kind of baffled, like there's some sort of internal conflict brewing within you about this movie.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know.
I think you secretly like it.
It's kind of like a sad hand job.
How's that?
Like, yeah, there's some gratification from it, but it wasn't really what you wanted.
Well, at least there was gratification. That's better than you've gotten from the previous movies we've watched.
Yeah, no, the previous movies have basically been the blue balls of movies.
Well, I really, really, really enjoy this movie. I would go so far as to say I love this movie as much as I love Cannibal.
Oh, I definitely like this movie more than Cannibal.
Well, part of it is because I have a personal stake in this movie. When I was 5 years old, I saw this movie being shot. I lived about half an hour away from where it was, and I literally remember, it's a very fuzzy memory, but I remember seeing Donald Pleasence stagger across the rocks on the beach and heading toward the airplane. It blew my mind. I've got some pictures of the set that my dad took back then, and we'll try and get them in the show notes. But literally, I saw this movie being shot. There's no reason it should be as good as it is. I think this movie stands out for its time because it's got some really awesome stunt work, some terrific scoring. The scoring in this movie, of course, is by a composer named Brian May, who is not the Queen Brian May, but he also scored stuff like the Mad Max movies, Cloak and Dagger, which was the Henry Thomas movie, and a little movie from the 90s that may or may not be on the list called Dr. Giggles.
This is going to be one of those moments again where you tirade about the basis of this movie for 3 minutes and then talk about how terrible your tirade was, because we should just stop this now if that's the case.
I'd love to, but I don't have that much to say. There's not like a what could have been about this movie or what should have been. George Peppard, the year after this, got on the A-Team and became one of the biggest stars. If this movie had come out after the A-Team started, it would have been the biggest news in New Zealand since...
No, I mean, honestly, like, for when this movie was shot, with the early 80s, I'm assuming this movie came out like 1981, 82, somewhere around
81.
there.
81's when it was released.
So, for the time period in which this movie was shot, it was well done. Like, the special effects aren't terrible. They're not. There's no CGI involved. I mean, it's actual explosions. I mean, the explosions are overdone, but that was kind of the 80s thing. Like...
Yeah, this is like the A-Team before the A-Team.
Yeah,
where you shoot a million rounds of machine gun fire and never hit anybody.
Yeah, you've got a ton of stuff that doesn't make sense, but it was kind of, it's very period-ish. Like, it makes sense for the period now. If this movie was released today, it'd be a piece of garbage.
Well, if this movie was released today, it would have CGI all over the place.
It'd be terrible. But for when this movie was released, which was, for the record, before I was born, it's not terrible. It's just, it's one of those movies where it's like, I watched this movie and it's for when it was released and it just makes sense. It's definitely the best movie we've watched so far in comparison to everything else. Like,
yeah, I'll say I really enjoy this movie. The worst thing about this movie is the acting performances of all four of the main leads.
Oh yeah, no, they couldn't act for shit.
They're terrible, absolutely gonzo. I think
it's
all
like they
four
hated
of these
each
people,
other.
Yeah, I think all four of these people probably hated each other. They're all at the just absolute bottom of their careers at this point.
It's like watching the last season of any sitcom that's tried to go too long, because it's obvious that the actors no longer like each other. They are just doing it for the money, and it's just to the point now where there's no real chemistry between anybody. I mean, the whole movie just seemed like it was four people who were getting paid to do a movie, who didn't like each other, who were very upset they had to do this movie, but for some reason there's a payday involved somehow. It's the whole... I don't know. Like, this movie could have been so much more. Like, the plot behind this movie is actually really interesting. I mean, it's a treasure hunt movie. I mean, there's tons of treasure hunt movies out there. You got National Treasure, Goonies, different movies like that where the basic concept is there. And there could have been a lot more involved with this, and they could have done a lot better job. But
well,
I mean, it was probably a very low budget. It's in a shot in a foreign country.
And in that era, everybody wanted to make the next Indiana Jones. Which necessarily
isn't bad. I mean, there's a lot of foreign country movies that are great, but it just seems like this movie was made out of spite more than anything else. Like, it just, I don't know.
Well, it kind of was with the Australian Actors Guild issue
Yeah,
I mentioned earlier. They
It's
they
kind of
really
like that
objected to
season
that.
of Heroes where all the writers went on strike, but you still watched it because it was okay. I don't know.
Well, when you talk about the acting, I mean, everybody in this is obviously in it for the payday. They're all at the bottom of their careers. Some of them rose back up, some of them didn't. Ken Wall, who plays Barney, had been in a movie with Paul Newman, I think, at this point, and was a promising newcomer, and basically faded. There are rumors that he's kind of a jerk, and if you look at his Twitter, yeah, he's a real butthole. But he went on in the 90s to be in the show Wise Guy, which I remember being
Never
in
watched.
reruns on USA. Yeah, he was in it, quit after 3 years, and won a Golden Globe in 1990 for it. But he retired from acting in 1996. I'm not sure if that's a retired or an air quotes retired just because nobody would offer him any more roles. But he married one of the Barbie twins. If you're my age, you know who they are. And I won't go into detail on that, but they were definitely twins. And he does a lot of...
They'd like to show off their twins. We got it.
Yeah, pretty much. They do lots of work now for like Wounded Warrior Project, that sort of thing, animal welfare charities. But if you look at the guy's Twitter, he's kind of a dipshit.
Yeah, the other interesting thing I noticed is that the majority of the main actors in this movie are now dead.
Yeah, well, a majority being 50%.
That's still a majority.
That's not a majority. That's just half.
It's a little over 50%. 3 of the 5. It's more like 60%.
Leslie Ann Warren, who's still alive, did lots of TV parts.
She's still alive, and Ken Wall's
still alive. She was Miss Scarlet in Clue. If people are wondering where they've seen her before.
She was also in Plain Sight, which is a series that I actually liked.
Yeah, okay. And she was a guest star on one of the greatest television shows of all time, The Muppet Show.
Well, I mean,
that's how high in regard she was at one point, but
Show?
That was definitely before this movie.
Anyways, I don't really know how to talk about this movie because there's no real talking points about this movie. It was very blah. I mean, it wasn't something that I necessarily.
Well, you say it's blah. I think it's full of action.
I don't
and
really
adventure.
want to get into like the what everybody's done afterwards type thing because like that seems kind of like a boring tirade.
Okay, well then let's talk about what before, because Donald Pleasence. 234 credits on IMDb. The dude was in everything from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. He really was. Most folks would know him as being Dr. Loomis in the Halloween movies. He was the prototypical Blofeld in the James Bond movies, and You Only Live Twice, the one that Dr. Evil was based off of. He's in Fantastic Voyage, The Eagle Has Landed, The Great Escape is a big one, Escape from New York. He had 4 Tony nominations for Best Actor in a Play, yet in this movie he's still unintelligible and you can't tell what his accent is trying to be.
It's just terrible. Like, I don't... this movie is just...
He just yells Barney about, 11 billion times, and that's his excuse for New Zealand accent, I guess.
I don't get this movie. Like, I don't understand how it was made, why it was made, how it became what it is. The whole thing just seems...
Well, it was going to be made because
ridiculous.
In the 70s there were these huge tax breaks in Australia for making movies there. And there was a dispute with the Actors Guild since they imported the 4 actors from overseas. And they moved it to New Zealand out of complete spite. But still made it. And I think it's a good movie. I think it's a great movie. I love this movie.
I mean, the redeeming factor to this movie is that it was shot in New Zealand. And as we all know, anything shot in New Zealand is absolutely gorgeous. Like, the scenes behind different things were just amazing. Like, in all honesty, like, watching the boat chase and watching the helicopter chases, and, like, to me, that was the best part of the movie because you got to see the scenery of New Zealand, you got to see the mountains, the lakes. Like, New Zealand is a gorgeous country. Like, I mean, there's a reason why movies are shot there. There's a reason why shows are shot there because it's amazing. I mean, I would love to go visit there and just hang out there. I wish I knew somebody who was from New Zealand. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, if only you knew somebody from New Zealand.
I know. I mean,
yeah.
we should find somebody from New Zealand to hang out with because I feel like he'd probably be a pretty cool person.
I'm sure they would. Your guy's right here. I saw it being filmed. I lived in New Zealand. I'm a New Zealander.
That's right.
Can't help it.
Anyway, so I guess as far as rating for this movie, out of 10, I'd give it a solid 3.
You would give it 3 out of 10.
3 out of
Seriously?
10. Yeah, no, I mean...
3 out of 10.
The scenery behind it is gorgeous. I mean, the acting isn't terrible. The action scenes are okay.
Oh, the acting is terrible.
But it's not terrible. It's not like it's so bad that I wanted to to drill a hole in my head.
Well, they're all experienced actors that appear to never have given a shit.
Yeah,
How's
no,
that?
I mean the accents weren't good, but I mean overall, I mean the plot line behind it's really good for the most part. They didn't execute their plot properly. There wasn't really a good dialogue. The romantic interest piece was kind of shit.
There's zero sexual
but
chemistry in
definitely,
this movie.
I mean, a 3. I mean, there's a fun scene where they're welding and singing along to hillbilly songs. I mean, they create a Hank out of helicopters. I mean, there's some fun points to this. I mean, had this been given a good budget, this movie could have been really great.
Well, I was gonna say this is like a high budget, long episode of the A-Team.
Yeah, I mean, if it was one of those things where like low budget and Kevin Smith produced it, it could have been good and directed it. But it just wasn't. I mean, it just, I feel like this, I really do feel like this movie was made out of spite. Like, there was some sort of like we're going to make this movie no matter what because we don't care.
I think there was, because there was money in it.
Yeah.
For at least the producers. I'm sure the actors all got a paycheck too.
So, I honestly think that I would like to see this movie redone.
I'm not against that. I think this movie, given a bigger budget, would be terrific.
I mean, with a good director, with a bigger budget, with good A-list actors, I think this movie, the concept behind this movie could be really good. It'd be one of those films that'd be like kind of like a Fast and Furious film where it's like not a great film, but it's fun to watch. You want to watch it again. If it's on TV, you'll catch it or whatever else. But it's not one of those movies you're going to seek out to go see. But it'd be a fun movie. I mean, it's a really good concept behind all this. I mean, you're trying to find this World War I plane that was taken down. It's got these medals. And
it's World War II for the listener.
World War II, sorry. But I think that there could be more. There could be more to this. Like the letters end up get delivered to people later on, or the medals were actually given to people who deserve them, or the gold was recovered and given to some charity. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen in this movie that could make it a lot better than what ended with it. Like it just ended up like
it just ended sort of stone cold.
It just kind of just ended like, oh, now they run this tourist group.
Yeah, they had a little bit of epilogue on the screen and text.
I mean, it wasn't.
It's nothing special.
There was no real finality to it. It seemed like this movie just left me wanting so much more. It's
you talked a little about the director. The director was actually a replacement director, and he was a little more well known for being an actor in England. But he went on to direct some American TV. He directed a few episodes of the A-Team, Airwolf, another popular TV show of the time.
Airwolf.
And he directed the first 2 episodes, the 2-parter of Quantum Leap, which I love. So I can't complain about his direction.
I mean, it's not a bad film. It just isn't good. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's kind of like getting steak and eggs from IHOP.
Well, like I said, it's a high budget episode of the A-Team.
Yeah.
If it was a 2-part episode of the A-Team in New Zealand, that would have fit perfectly.
It's like an 80s version of Michael Bay.
They'd have saved the Yankee Zephyr, given the gold to orphans, and everybody would have been happy.
I mean, there could have been so much more to this movie. I feel like they just failed. They get lazy, and so to me, that's
lazy. You saw George Peppard on screen, right, with his weird ass accent, just sort of sitting around and yelling the whole time. I mean, he was at a low point in his career. The A-Team hadn't cast him yet, which this was an act of desperation, I'm sure. Started his career with a bang, won a BAFTA for his first movie. Was Paul in Breakfast at Tiffany's, which was another huge break.
Yeah.
And was sort of allegedly such an asshole that he could barely get cast after that. He did a week of game shows on, Password back in the 70s. You know that show, Password?
Yeah.
He did full 5-day stretch, which I think is probably 1 day's shooting. But they never, ever aired one of those episodes because he would not stop bad-mouthing NBC, the network on which Password was aired.
The password is...
Well, the password is he got lucky and got cast in the A-Team, and that brought him back.
Yeah, which I love the A-Team.
He was such an asshole when he was doing the A-Team that he got mad because Mr. T, he felt, was upstaging him. So he refused to talk to him on the set, instead of telling other people, tell Mr. T that I feel that he should be doing this right now. Like,
so petty.
That sort of petty. Yeah. Just such an asshole. So he's dead.
Yeah. I don't know. This movie it doesn't really punch any numbers for me. It doesn't really, I don't have this adverse reaction to it. Like, I really feel like this podcast may just be kind of blah because I don't really have any adverse reaction to this movie.
So you don't think I could fire you up about this movie?
No.
I feel this movie is vastly superior to Ace Ventura 2, When Nature Calls.
You'd just be wrong.
I wouldn't be wrong. This movie is way better than that.
No.
No rhino butt babies in this movie. It's all about finding that airplane.
No, just shitty accents.
Yeah, okay, well, shitty accents and weird, non-existent sexual tension.
Yeah, I mean, there was more sexual tension between Ace Ventura and that fake rhino than there was between the two main actors in this movie.
I'm not going to disagree with you like that. Sweaty Jim Carrey.
You know you love sweaty Jim Carrey.
All right. Oh, by the way, I have a note here. This podcast is brought to you by Purple. Purple, the perfect color for nurples.
Really?
Really?
Purple nurple. That's what we're going to go with.
Look, we don't have any sponsors. Nobody's listening. Nobody cares.
Well, that's cool, man.
Okay.
Listen.
I listen. So hold on. Raise your hands if you listen to this podcast in this room. 4 out of 4, 100%. So if we extrapolate that out to the entire population, 7 billion listeners.
I think
so sponsors hit us up.
Yeah, we've got like 22 likes now on Facebook. So, and they're all still following us.
Yeah, mostly.
So 22 for 22, which again is 100%. So extrapolate that to the world, 7 billion people.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. There's no Rotten Tomatoes critic score for this movie because it really wasn't released over here.
No.
It was released worldwide though.
What does IMDb say?
Just not in the U.S. IMDb, I don't have those figures in front of me. If you look at Letterboxd, it's 3 stars, but I have an awesome game for us today. Okay, so
3 out of 5.
This was released in the Soviet Union in 1983. Okay, so how many people do you think saw this in the Soviet Union in 1983?
12.
We'll start out at, let's go 1 million.
Lower.
Lower than 1 million.
Yeah.
You're wrong. It's higher. You want to guess again?
No, I have no idea. 1.6.
1.6? Nope, it's higher.
2.8.
2.8. Nope, higher. Higher still.
How many people lived in the Soviet Union back then?
Millions and millions and millions.
So just tell me the number.
But you also have to realize, they got force-fed movies. So this movie, which I'm assuming didn't offend any of the USSR codes or morals.
No.
Let's go to 15 million. Higher or lower?
Higher.
Higher. 20 million.
I don't know. Just tell me, please.
Really?
Please stop this game.
In 1983, this was released in the Soviet Union and was one of the leaders at the Soviet box office because 29 million people went to see this movie.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. And
so IMDb gives us 5.7 out of 10 stars.
Yeah, which that's a mediocre movie.
Yeah, I mean that's 57% of people like this movie.
Yeah, I really love this movie.
I gave it 3 stars personally, which is more than twice as high as any movie we watched.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's just because there wasn't really anything great about this movie. Like it has been like a defining moment that really made me enjoy this movie. Like I would give it more, but it just wasn't. It was so bleh.
But it's a low budget movie, a foreign movie.
I mean,
there's no money in
this movie. Like I said, for what it was, I don't hate this movie. Yeah, so we have found a movie that I don't hate.
I absolutely have to say the stunt work in this movie is top notch. The explosions pretty good. The action sequences far better, I think, than most other movies of the time. With a low budget.
Oh, way better than Cannibal the Musical.
Oh well, Cannibal the Musical was made for a fraction of this movie. I mean, it was made by a bunch of college kids financing on their credit cards and asking their buddies for money, basically.
Yeah, I mean... So, 3 out of 10 stars. That's
3 out of 10 stars. Out of 10. Wow, I am impressed.
And no Michael Caine.
We're well on our way.
Had Michael Caine in this movie, getting 5 out of 10.
Ooh, can you imagine Michael Caine as Gibby in this movie?
Oh, it's so much better.
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure because Donald Pleasence played just an absolute lush.
So, Michael Caine should have been Brown.
Is that a racist statement?
No.
Okay.
Brown was one of the characters in the movie.
Oh, Mr. Brown. Okay.
Yeah.
I was worried there. I didn't know what direction you were taking.
Because Michael Caine could have used his normal British accent.
No. Michael Caine as Theo Brown in this movie. That would have been amazing.
Amazing. As the villain.
So who else?
The villain that you love.
Who else would you cast in this movie then? And we have to take it back to 1981.
Michael Caine as Theo Brown.
Yeah, I'm on board with you.
I would have cast, let's say, Susan Sarandon as the female actress.
Susan Sarandon, just a few years off of Rocky Horror. I can go for that.
Let's see. The main
that
male
brings up
interest-
something that I have a real problem with this in the movie, though, is that
you could have done Tom Cruise as the main male interest. He'd been the right age.
He wouldn't have been though. In '81, he'd have been really young. That's
okay,
like
though.
All the right moves era.
Yeah.
Or losing it era.
It could have
like
worked.
high school era. Tom Cruise.
Yeah, but Tom Cruise has looked the same age for 30 years, so
that's true. But a lot of that is
and then
thanks to the
who could have
miracles
played
of
the
modern
crazy
science
old
and
drunk?
CGI.
Let's see here. Crazy old
81.
drunk. Oh, Clint Eastwood.
Really?
Yeah.
I can see that. You got a little paint your wagon drunk vibe sort of thing going on.
Yeah, little Clint Eastwood. Little drunk find the treasure.
A nod of disapproval. Absolute disapproval and disgust.
Yeah,
from
our producer does not like
from
Clint
Engineer
Eastwood.
Mike.
So
we have to find a different drunk.
Let's see here. Who's the guy who played who's the guy who played Coach? Craig
T. Nelson.
Yeah.
Post Poltergeist. As a drunk, I'm not sure I see it, but I'll go with you. But you're who is going to be your love interest for Susan Sarandon?
I don't know. I that's too far back for me. So
81. Who would have been
It'd
a
been really
sort of
hard.
action-y-ish star? Let's go.
I mean,
since it's weird
that
that
could have done it.
Who could have done it?
Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris, maybe. I tell you what, Chuck Norris probably was on the short list for this movie because he was making a bunch of terrible canon films about this time period. So yeah, I can see it. I was thinking maybe Lou Gossett Jr., but it's weird because this character in this movie,
Harrison Ford,
is an American. Harrison Ford would have been way too big for this,
but he could have done it.
I get it, but
Can you imagine Harrison Ford in this movie? Searching for lost treasure. I know it's a stretch.
I know it's a stretch.
But
Never
Harrison
looked for
Ford
lost
searching
treasure.
for lost treasure in an airplane in New Zealand. I'm just saying.
I'm thinking Lou Gossett Jr.
Yeah,
that would have been good. He's about the right budget range for this. Dolph Lundgren from Engineer Mike. That's pretty good. Although him pulling off any accent in this time period would have been bizarre.
You know who could have done it?
Oh, if you say Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, even better. Sylvester Stallone.
Ooh, Sly.
Yeah.
On a treasure hunt in New Zealand?
Yeah. Can you imagine him trying to do
a helicopter
New
flying
Zealand
deer
accent?
farmer?
Can you imagine him trying to do a New Zealand accent?
Yeah. I'm in New Zealand. Eh?
Oh, okay. This has devolved too far. We need to wrap this up somehow.
You want to wrap it up? I just have one more major note about this movie.
Of course you do.
A lot of this movie was cast in New Zealand outside of the four actors. I know. Outside of the four main actors, it's just a bunch of no-name New Zealanders. There are a couple of really good ones. But in the crew list, boom operator is Lee Tamahori. And you probably don't know that name. He's not a huge name over here. But he directed a New Zealand movie called Once Were Warriors that got released worldwide that is fairly acclaimed. But everybody over here would know him as the director of the maligned and rightly so despicable James Bond movie Die Another Day. It is the worst Bond movie by far. And
you're the worst Bond movie by far.
I'm the worst. Okay, you've had a bit too much to drink, I think.
You've had too much to drink.
You're right, I have. But Die Another Day, terrible, terrible movie, and his career has never recovered since. But it was his big break over here. So
I feel like this episode may be the one that destroys his podcast.
No, I think it'll be the last episode if it ever airs.
I don't know. I think it was a pretty good episode.
You think it was a pretty good episode?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that episode.
I don't really want to talk about it in case it does never
you
air.
really want to go there?
No. Okay.
I
don't want to talk about it anymore. That's why we have mentioned the scores from previous movies.
So, anyways, as always, you are a son of a bitch, but I love you. And I'm glad that you finally found a movie that I don't necessarily hate, but I don't actually love. Like, I'm not angry at you about this movie. I just am kind of,
I think we're on the right track, though. We're on the right track.
I have a feeling it's going to get worse, though.
Next week, we have a special guest. We're going to watch a movie that I feel is...
You're going to subject somebody else to me.
Oh, we'll see.
You must not like them very much.
But I will say, the next movie is pretty fucking bad.
No, I've heard about it. It's pretty bad. It's a sequel to a bad movie.
Yep. No, it's a sequel to a good movie, I think, anyway. But then again,
Yeah, your opinion.
Hindsight.
You
All
also
right.
like me, so I mean, we know what your opinions are worth.
Oh, come on, Josh. You know I love you, Josh.
I love you too, buddy.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.
This episode of You're Gonna Love This or Not was recorded at the SFP Studios, located off of beautiful Eagle Creek Reservoir in Indianapolis, Indiana. It features Matt dragging Josh down into the dark depths of his movie collection and is released monthly on the Team Geeking family of podcasts. It is produced by Mike Wycliffe, edited by Tony Troxel, and features music by Scott Holmes, who can be found on the Free Music Archive. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or the podcatcher of your choice, and please leave us a rating and review. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.